Hello, friends, and welcome back to Scaling Stories. Today, I got some more highly upvoted posts from Best of Redditor updates. Like always, I'll be reading you the posts and giving you my opinions, and I also hope you do the same in the comments down below. Also, I'm currently only in Spotify's creator program, so watching on there would help me out a ton. Thank you so much for your support. Today's story comes from the Relationship Advice subreddit. It was posted by I Think My Wife Is Hot 1 on November 30th, 2019, and was titled, My 36 male, wife, 43 female, thinks I couldn't be attracted to her and therapist agreed? Background. Married a little over 2 years after dating for a very short time, around 3 months. We met at a work event, and I was immediately smitten with my wife. It was like out of a movie. I saw her chatting with a group of people, and in my head, I heard, oh, there she is. She was newly divorced and took some convincing on my part, but we have been together from that night on and get along extremely well. Now, for clarity, I am extremely attracted to my wife. We may just still be in the honeymoon stage, but I've never felt this way about another woman. And because it pertains to the conversation we had today with her therapist, I would say the majority of the population would find her attractive, and not in a niche way. She is objectively attractive. I feel we are evenly matched in looks. Very few people have noticed the slight age difference. She, however, wins in personality, outgoing and charming, and she makes about 3 times as much money as I do. A couple of months ago, we ran into an ex of mine, and by ex, we literally dated for maybe a month and were never exclusive. Afterward, my wife mentioned how different they were, age/hair color/body type, etc., and it ended in a pretty heated argument. We have had 3 or 4 conversations since, all of which involved me trying to convince my wife I'm not going to leave her for a woman I dated years ago. Last week, she asked if I would go to her therapist with her today, and I agreed. She has been seeing her for about 8 years for anxiety and a bout of depression that happened before we met. Today. It started normally enough, and I had figured out why we were there, so I just jumped into it, thinking the therapist would be on my side and would help me calm my wife's fears. That's not what happened. The therapist did very little talking, although their long silences and knowing glances started to piss me off right away. The thing that stood out to me the most was how my wife reiterated that she doesn't see how I would be attracted to her, and the therapist didn't even disagree. Like, I felt like a crazy person. My wife is beautiful, charming, and funny. It feels like I wished her into existence. She brought up the age difference, 7 years, my looks, and how quickly I wanted to get married as all reasons why I am basically a gold digger. First off, we both wanted to get married quickly. I asked and figured she would want a long engagement, but she didn't, so we got married. Second, I never even discussed money with her until after we were married and never dreamed she made so much more than I do. She said she doesn't think I'm after her money, but that I enjoy the lifestyle while I'm with her, and it makes it easier to pretend I'm attracted to her. Sorry, more attracted to her, like I play it up. I'm completely blindsided and don't really want to talk to my family or friends. It's humiliating being accused of marrying someone for a lifestyle. For clarity, I moved into her house. I rent out my old home, but that income just covers the mortgage and the company that manages it. All our money goes into a joint checking account with automatic transfers into savings, etc. Our bills are paid from that account. I looked at our bank account, and I spend significantly less than she does each month, on average. After leaving, I'm in a complete panic that she is going to leave me, even though I feel humiliated and love her so much. I immediately wanted to offer to sign a prenup or separate our bank accounts, or both, but I just froze. My wife seems so sad, and I'm so frustrated. I didn't even do anything wrong. The women I've dated in my past don't have a similar type, and to be honest, I didn't really date, more like hooked up for a few months and then moved on. I love my wife. She is the first woman I have ever met with whom I have had a real partnership, like we were a team, and now that's all gone. I don't feel like I have the strength to leave her. It scares me that I can't envision a scenario where I would leave. She is my most favorite person. How do I rebuild trust when I don't feel I ever did anything to lose it? Scaling Stories Corner. Well, that sucks for OP. I think his wife is dealing with some insecurities about her relationship that have been weighing on her for a while. Like, she probably has been thinking about the 7-year age difference and financial difference for quite some time. But it wasn't until they ran into OP's ex that these insecurities really started stabbing at her and making her doubt OP's love. And to that, I will say that she definitely didn't help herself here in some of the points she used when accusing OP of being a gold digger or a lifestyle leech. So first off, about the gold digger comment, it takes two people agreeing to get married and go through the entire process. If you think your partner was a gold digger, you should not have married him 3 months into dating. If 3 months wasn't enough time for you to assess if your partner is with you for good intentions, then you shouldn't have gotten married to them. If you were afraid they were using you for your money, then you should have signed a prenup. She didn't do any of these things, so it feels wrong to blame OP for them now. And for the lifestyle comment that OP must enjoy the lifestyle that she can afford because she makes more than him, like, of course? Who would say no? Is he supposed to say, no, I hate it? Isn't that just a natural thing that happens in a relationship if one person earns significantly more than the other? Like, you can afford to do nicer things together. Of course, it's a nice luxury to have. But also, OP didn't know how much money you made before you got married. If that was a problem where one person in the relationship earns and spends more than the other person, then again, that should have been discussed before getting married. OP has brought up all these points and more to his wife, and besides showing her this post, I'm not sure what else you can do to make someone else reassured that you actually love them. Someone who believes that you don't love them is going to think and see every possible angle that you don't actually love them and that you're just putting up a performance. I think usually you're supposed to go to a third party to help mediate this, but even her therapist didn't help OP out, which also I believe that could have been due to her being biased towards OP's wife. OP's wife has been seeing her for 8 years already and has probably been venting a lot of her insecurities to this therapist. And 8 years is a long time to be talking to someone. So maybe this therapist sees OP's wife more as a friend than a client and has already started seeing OP as the enemy. So maybe they can go to a different therapist or marriage counselor that doesn't know either of them and they explain their situations to them and then they get an unbiased opinion and perspective. Now here are some of the top/relevant comments from the original post. Commenter 1 says, so what is her proposed solution? What did the therapist suggest? Did either of them have any sort of path you could travel to fix this? Because unless there's something they think you can do to fix this, it kind of seems like a pointless thing to bring up. You came to the obvious solution, offer a prenup, but it's also a pretty upsetting thing to have to do. Plus, now you're always going to wonder what your wife thinks of you. Does she really believe that you'd do that to her? I think her therapist has badly effed up here. A good therapist should have asked questions to help your wife figure it out for herself, especially as a person who's long battled with depression. This sucks, man. I'm sorry. OP says, I left early. I think now that I was having a panic attack and left and waited in the car, but I don't want to wait for the next shoe to drop. From what I can remember, there were no fixes suggested, but I should ask once I calm down and collect my thoughts. OP says to another commenter, I have no experience and went in with the idea that we were going to solve my wife's jealousy in a few minutes and get on with our lives. I didn't have realistic expectations and panicked immediately when things didn't go my way. OP says to another commenter, I rambled on like an idiot for the first 15 minutes about how my wife can't get upset every time we run into a person from my past and how much we love each other, then immediately went silent when my wife was explaining why she thought I was not really in love with her. Total, it was about 25 minutes before I just got up. OP says to another commenter, yeah, my wife, in the past, asked if I was fetishizing her because of how obsessed I was with her physically. At the time, I assumed it was because of her past issues with her ex-husband and having not been in a new relationship in a while. But that was before we were even married and not recently. I wonder if someone is feeding into her insecurities. I don't really care if she makes more or less money than me. I lived a comfortable life before, and nothing really has changed except for a slightly bigger house in a much better neighborhood. Not to sound like I was well off, but being middle class with no kids or debt is fairly carefree. OP says to another commenter, she was very open about her issues with anxiety and depression, and would like to believe she would tell me if she had another diagnosis, but I really don't know at this point. My wife isn't impulsive in general and is very calm and easygoing about 99% of the time. Her last marriage lasted 16 years, and she suspected infidelity, but it was never definitive, and she has a good/fair relationship with her ex, as they have 2 children together, 1 adult/1 teen. She has a few close friends, but her main close relationships are with her sisters and mother. Her father died shortly after we met. Would someone with a personality disorder be able to keep close relationships? I googled immediately after reading your comment, and it didn't seem to fit, but I could be in denial. It seems her therapist was in the wrong, and I don't think I'll be going back. However, she is a big part of my wife's life, so I don't plan on badmouthing her, just suggesting we see someone new. Commenter 2 says, it doesn't sound like you did anything wrong but are a victim of her insecurities. My suggestion to you is that the two of you see an unbiased therapist for additional help. Therapists are human and can develop an alliance with a long-term patient, sometimes to the point of subconsciously taking sides. I think her therapist reinforced her fears and caused more damage instead of helping in this case. OP says, I don't know why, but you saying that therapists are humans made me feel a ton better. It's so weird to think of my wife as insecure. It's an odd feeling seeing someone you think so much of being so sure they are unattractive. OP adds an edit to his post. My wife didn't come home last night, but I texted her this morning, first apologizing for leaving the session and then asking her to come home so we could formulate a plan. No word back yet, but I doubt she will check her phone before lunch if she went to work. Thanks for letting me vent. I've already asked my insurance company to send a list of counselors for me to call later today. Hopefully, I will find a good fit, as I don't even know how to go about picking one. OP adds a second edit to his post. I need a referral from my general doctor before insurance will cover a therapist/psychologist. I have an emergency phone appointment Monday and will be seeing someone by myself. My wife didn't return my text but did come home about an hour later. Honestly, I cried for the first time in a long time, but was able to get across how seriously I take her concerns. I haven't mentioned anything about her therapist or my feelings about things. Just apologized and asked for another chance to hear her out completely. She said she was really drained and is taking a nap. I don't think she made it into work and I'm actually looking forward to having the weekend to talk. I'm not going to ask for couples counseling until I talk to my own therapist. This is probably it unless I F things up this weekend. Thanks for letting me type out my feelings and being honest. Even the hard comments were helpful. Update 9 days later. Despite my hyperbolic title, I received a lot of feedback on my last post and thought I would thank everyone again and do an update. Talk with my wife. During last weekend, I was made aware of a lot of things I was doing to compound my wife's fear of being abandoned/used. The major thing that stuck out to me was my immaturity and unwillingness to discuss anything serious. When my wife would bring up her ex-husband or finances, in particular, I would A, make a joke, or B, try and end the conversation as soon as possible. I'm not sure why, it just made me uncomfortable, and I didn't see the value of discussing things that weren't a major problem, to me. I was happy, and my needs were being met, so I assumed hers were too. It was my most damaging mistake. Another misunderstanding happened with my ex. In my mind, it was a quick 5-minute conversation. To my wife, it was much more. So, about 6 months ago, I injured my knee running. I had been, up to that point, a pretty serious low-mileage runner, 5/10 miles 3 times a week. After the injury, my doctor suggested I try weightlifting, as I was worried about physical therapy not being enough. Well, I hired a personal trainer and have been a gym rat ever since. It's become a serious hobby that I apparently obsessively talk about. I have invited my wife, who occasionally does yoga, several times and even talked about getting her a membership for Christmas, even though she showed no interest. So, when we ran into my ex and I noticed she looked significantly different, she put on about 10 pounds of muscle. I complimented her, and we talked about weightlifting for a few minutes while my wife stood to the side. My ex told me to add her on Instagram, which, while I did look her up to add her, her page was mostly advertising supplements, so I didn't end up doing it. My wife took this chance run-in as proof that I was unhappy with the way she looked and was trying to get her to change. Add in some harsh comments from one of our coworkers about our relationship, her sister pushing for a prenup, and my lack of communication, and everything came to a head these last few months. My therapist. The most helpful advice was to get my own personal therapist. I kind of just picked one from a list my provider emailed me, but it seems to be going well. A lot of things were discussed, but my major takeaway was that it isn't my job to calm my wife's fears completely. Listening and being reassuring are healthy, but trying to make everything better won't help either of us. My therapist said that even if I tried, my wife's own voice in her head runs 24/7 and I could never keep up. This was hard to hear, as I have definitely made some major mistakes, but besides acknowledging them and doing better, everything else is out of my control. She recommended a book called The Happiness Trap that I haven't ordered yet, but she said it would help me understand what it's like to have anxiety and may explain, not excuse, some of my wife's behavior. My therapist also said I should look into my wife's therapist, as she sounds unlicensed, and if I felt comfortable, she could put in a complaint on my behalf. I will probably do this, but I am letting things settle. So, after probably the worst 2 days of my life, things seem to be better. I haven't brought up a prenup because she seemed offended when my wife told me that her sister brought one up as a solution. I did offer separate bank accounts, but she said no and only requested that we update her will and create one for me, as I didn't even have one. I thought it would be weird, but we both put each other as beneficiaries, along with her 2 children, if we both died. We only filled out the paperwork and still have to turn it in to her lawyer, but it's made a difference, though I'm not sure why. I did delete my Facebook. I haven't used it for years, but when I went on, it was very single me. Lots of old girlfriends, holidays, etc., and I never even updated that I was married. I had a notification from my wife from when she tried years ago, but it just sat there. My wife is still fairly active on Facebook, and I could see how that would feel awful, even though she never mentioned it. My last update was a picture of a woman and me, whom I randomly met in Hawaii during a vacation. I titled it, 2 Blondes, with hearts. Like, my whole page was embarrassing. I can't imagine what her family or friends thought when they found me. I was completely public and kind of a dick on there. I still feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. But honestly, there is no other person I would ever want to try this hard for. And if I'm becoming a better person for trying, it will be worth it, no matter the outcome. Things are still really shaky, and she leaves immediately after Christmas for work. This whole episode has kicked on my anxiety, but I'm hopeful. Scaling Stories Corner. Okay, so there was a lot of missing reasons I think that OP didn't describe in detail in his original post. Mostly being he wasn't actually being communicative with his wife when she would bring up her concerns and he would brush them off. So of course his wife thought OP wasn't being completely 100% with her, because he just wasn't. Can you imagine being the wife and therapist in the original post, and based on what he said in the comments of the original post, he just comes in and rants for like 15 minutes about how insecure his wife is and how she can't get upset if they run into someone from his past, and then try to say how attractive he finds her, but when no one agrees with him, he just panics and leaves? So if you're OP's wife and you're telling your therapist about how OP is immature and unwilling to discuss anything serious, and literally every time you try to bring up the topic of finances or your ex, OP literally tried to end the conversation as fast as possible, or he jokes it off, then they're just watching this guy come into the session and validate everything OP's wife has been venting about. The therapist should have definitely broached the topics that OP's wife talked about, but he rage quit his session like 15 minutes in, so I'm not really sure if I place fault with the therapist. He said he only got to really listen to his wife this time after he talked with her once again on the weekend. Now here are some of the top/relevant comments from the update post. Commenter 1 says, "Wow, this is a super awesome follow-up. I love how much you have self-reflected and looked at mistakes you were making instead of just being like, my wife is being crazy and there's nothing I can do. This is so refreshing to read. I really hope things work out for the best between you two. You should tell your wife that last part about not wanting to work that hard for anyone else, and I hope she is able to get the help she needs as well. Best of luck, OP." OP says, "Thank you. I'm trying because even though we rushed into this marriage, I really do think we are a good match. Being honest with myself was scary, but I was amazed at how much of a difference I felt after one session with the therapist." Commenter 2 says, "Remember, Reddit, there's always 2 sides to every story. It's so hard to get the full picture from one person's point of view. Good for you, OP, for realizing all of this and working on the issues within your marriage. I hope you guys can work through all of this. I can tell you care about her." OP says, "My immaturity and lack of communication were contributing to a problem I didn't even know was there. Her insecurities aren't my problem, but if I love her and want to make this work, I can work on myself and be more forgiving when she needs extra support." Second update, 6 years, 7 months later. I received a chat request this morning asking for an update. Here is how I remember things, starting from where I left off. I immediately got into individual therapy, and we both joined couples therapy. I went individually for a few years, and we attended couples therapy for approximately 6 months. We both really liked our therapist, but we eventually ran out of things to discuss. The biggest takeaway from therapy was realizing what an absolute joke I had been. I was walking around with my brain literally turned off. I didn't take anything seriously, which made my wife think I couldn't be trusted. I thought everything would always work out, not even realizing she was the reason it did. Looking back, it was so embarrassing. All I had to do was start participating in our life. I'm incredibly grateful for the therapist who held me accountable and kindly told me to grow up. I wanted my wife to trust and lean on me, but I had shown no proof that I was actually capable. The issue with my wife's therapist resolved itself. I wanted to report her, but we were so fragile at the time that I thought it would look malicious. My wife started seeing her less and less, and then just never went back. I do think seeing how professional and competent our marriage therapist was, in contrast, helped that decision. I sold my old house because I was getting the feeling my wife thought it was my backup plan. I actually hated that house. I just didn't want to fail at my first attempt at home ownership. It was basically operating at a loss after taxes, repairs, and the rental company's share. My wife still works for the same company but as a consultant. She had a minor health scare and needed a more flexible schedule. My brother started a company and I eventually quit my job to join him in building the business. This has helped our relationship so much. Co-workers knowing our backstory didn't help with the gossiping and overall weird vibes. We never got a post-nuptial agreement, but we did write wills, which have been amended over the years. As it stands, we are each other's primary beneficiaries, and after that, everything gets split between the stepkids and a niece of ours whom we are both close with. Money hasn't been much of an issue since therapy. We are both big savers. Trust repaired a lot of issues. Advice: don't get married too quickly. Do discuss finances before getting married. Being married is harder than being single. The trade-off is having someone to commiserate with and to be truly known by. If your life got easier or stayed the same after marriage, check in with your partner. Scaling Stories Corner. Okay, so I have never been to therapy, so I don't know what makes a good therapist a good therapist. I kinda didn't think the wife's therapist was that bad in the original post, mostly because OP came into that therapy session just venting about how his wife needs to stop being insecure because he was so obviously attracted to her, and then he rage quit the session because no one was agreeing with him and he panicked. But I do think a good therapist would have brought up his wife's concerns about him not seriously listening to her when she's trying to talk about serious topics. At least brought them up quicker before OP has a chance to rage quit the session. And I do think that it was good for both of them to talk to a new therapist as a couple because 8 years talking to the same person will no doubt make someone biased in their thinking and perspective, even if they should be unbiased. And ultimately, I'm glad things worked out for him and his wife, and he was able to mature and actually be a partner who could listen to his wife when she needs him instead of brushing her off and thinking things are okay just because he feels okay. Now here are some of the top/relevant comments from the update post. Commenter 1 says, selling the house you hated just to prove a point is a pretty concrete way of showing you're all in. That's not nothing. It sounds like you two did the real work in therapy, not just the surface stuff. Commenter 2 says, I thought everything would always work out, not even realizing she was the reason it did. So many married men would only need to realize this, and their marriage and life would become so much better. Commenter 3 says, don't take this the wrong way, my guy, but I don't know what to make of a single mother giving you the time of day when you were in that state of mind. Consider yourself lucky. OP says, 100%. I actually don't think she would have even considered dating me if she hadn't come off a bad divorce. I'm so grateful things worked out, but I definitely got lucky. OP says to another commenter, I don't think either of us was in the wrong, just not communicating our needs efficiently. I thought I was happy with the way things were, and she wasn't, and it came out as fear of abandonment. The suddenly going to the gym 6 times a week, refusal to talk about anything serious, and that Facebook account did not do me any favors in proving I was committed. Okay friends, so that concludes today's video. Leave a like and comment down below to let me know what you thought of it, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Take care.